Okay, hi, Gail Fugit, President and CEO of the Advertising Research Foundation. I'm here with Brian Marr, and this is so great, Chief Strategy Officer at Smashing Ideas.
That's right.
Is it smashingly good ideas?
Smashingly good ideas.
Ideas that smash?
Yeah, it's not the breaking of them, but smashing.
Yeah, I love that. And a little bit about the organization. How old is it? How'd you find it? How did it find you?
It's it's an almost 20-year-old company. So
yeah?
it's been a digital company for 20 years. The company started as an animation
and located
studio.
In Seattle.
Located in Seattle. We have about 75 people. And started out as an animation house way back in the day, and then we moved into Flash animation when that was huge, and we were one of the largest independent Flash developers in the world, I think, at one point. And then as things changed and the iPhone came out and mobile became more popular, IoT, virtual reality,
yes.
all this stuff, we had to really change and pivot our business model. And now we're working.
How did you do that?
Through a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, to be totally honest. But that was why I joined the company, was to bring. It was a production house, and we brought strategy, research to the front end, and then full product realization to the back end. And that was about 3 years ago. And since then, now we're working with innovators and change agents to help them bring new ideas to market.
Right. So you majored in psychology. Does that come in handy?
It comes in really handy, especially.
How do you use it? We were having a fun conversation offline before we got started here.
It's one of those things. It's funny because it's come full circle for me, where I studied psychology and I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I ended up going.
Too.
Did you really? Yeah. So but
I mean, not for a major, but I loved psychology and social psychology of organizations, and I found it fascinating.
Well, and I think I've always been sort of an armchair behavioral psychologist. I love reading the books and learning about habit and things like that, but it comes in really handy with marketing. You're trying to understand where your customers' heads are and their needs and their motivations.
Yes.
And then deliver a solution to them that will meet that. And so, but more recently, we're really bringing elements of behavioral psychology into the work that we're doing. So.
Say more about that, because you have this. It's branded motivational UX.
Yeah.
So say more about that.
Sure.
How you came up with that? It had a little TM next
There's
to it.
a TM next to it.
Yeah,
we just got that this year.
Yes.
So
What inspired that?
That it's part history of the company. So the company comes from game design, a game design background, and when you think about game design, a great game triggers dopamine and happiness and all these things, and it's made to engage you and it's made to keep you involved. And we have a lot of people that work at the company that are very skilled at that. Then we have a lot of people that are very skilled at just good, solid user experience and helping people find a usable solution. And then you bring in the behavioral psychology piece, and when the three of those come together, we're able to create 9 principles that are that keep people engaged longer, create more loyalty. So we don't do a lot of campaigns, but we do, where people end up, like the product or the platform, that sort of thing.
How do you measure that?
Analytics, and so there's our big measures are all related to engagement.
And how do you measure the outcomes? Because I'm like, I have a research background.
Yeah.
So, it's like we kind of guarantee that you'll build loyalty, or that we'll build a brand, and I mean that's really the holy grail.
Right.
So I know that our members and me too are curious. And how did you sift through the analytics? Right.
That's a great question, and it's something that evolves as the things that we work on change, but. We're in sort of a unique position where, since we're creating the product, we do a lot of, during the product development process, we do a lot of testing. We do pilots. We have small groups of 30 to 90 people, and we can test it. We can put a product in market.
So you're just iterating and experimenting in
continually
real time, online in real time.
Yeah, as opposed to launching a campaign and hoping it works.
Brilliant.
Right?
Yeah.
So that we have analytics platforms.
Wish I had that.
Right, and and I've worked on both sides of the coin, where it's like, man, I really hope this works. Even if we've tested the creative a little bit or something like that, versus we can test a value proposition and feel pretty confident that we've reduced as much risk as possible for our clients. And then the measurements they're going to be sales as a big one, but then also
I'm
time
glad
spent.
You said that.
Yeah.
There's an odd debate going on in the industry about whether sales should be the metric, and I'm like, are you kidding me?
That's at the end of the day what we do.
I don't know if we get to keep our jobs if we don't have that in there.
I'm a capitalist at heart, and so there's at the end of the day, marketing is to drive sales, and it's whether it's someone giving you actual money or investing in your solution or investing their time in it. There's a transaction that has to take place, and at the end of the day, you have to get there. And so if you're at the top of the funnel, you have to drive people down to the bottom and find ways to hand off and convert. it's challenging, but it's getting easier with the technology that we have.
So here we are at CES 2016. How did you get here? Tell me your story.
Like physically
Where
get
did
here
you
on an
come
airplane?
from?
Or, yeah.
No. You know, so you majored in psychology,
Yeah,
and you've had
yeah.
other work experiences, and you're at Smashing Ideas now. And I mean, I am very intrigued and compelled by the, the gamification
Yeah.
and that, like, actually taking and tapping existing consumer behavior,
Yep.
and then kind of flipping it over to be about a brand experience,
Yes.
kind of along the lines of native advertising. So I think what
Absolutely,
you're doing is it's really fascinating and important
Thank
work.
you. Yeah.
But how do you find yourself here?
Yeah. I mean, the short version of
led
the
to
story
that?
was I worked at startups and some smaller companies in Silicon Valley and ended up at Microsoft and was a product manager at Microsoft. So really understanding how to bring a software product to market. But then I got really fascinated by community, and at the time we called it word of mouth marketing, which
Yes.
we rebranded it social media.
Yes.
The same way that one-to-one marketing was essentially rebranded CRM. But I got to work on some amazing campaigns when I was at Microsoft doing really cutting edge stuff, and that led me to an advertising agency. I worked at a place called the Wex's School for Girls, and I was managing director there for about 5 years. And while I was there, it was great to work on the campaigns, but I really felt myself, wanting to work on product again. And so
Yes.
Smashing is sort of the combination of those things. And so we're here because this is where all the energy is. This
So
is where
how
the
did they find
technology
you?
is.
Did they find you, or did you find them?
They found me. I was really fortunate. The CEO reached out to me and said, we're looking for someone that has your background, and would actually he just invited me for a coffee, and we had a
Yeah.
coffee and we got along really well.
Yeah.
And then he flipped the conversation. I was fortunate to meet our president and chatted with the two of them, and our president became the CEO eventually. And
Yeah.
he and I and then the rest of the leadership team have really been driving to pivot the company. And this last year was a great year for us, and so we're looking forward to 2016.
So how did they find? I mean, so they were kind of shopping around. I think people are kind of curious because it's
Yeah.
like, wow, this seems like such a perfect fit.
It was
And-
from what I understand, they'd interviewed a lot of people
Yes.
and hadn't quite found the right
Yes.
fit. Because
So they networked.
they networked, they
bit.
use LinkedIn,
Yes.
and so I mean
Yes,
that
because
was
someone yesterday said,
Yeah.
I'm embarrassed to tell you this, I've never told anyone, but I found it through Monster.com, right?
yeah.
And it's a senior executive, right? So
Yeah, and-
that I'm really sincerely curious about
Well,
this.
and I'll tell you, we have a recruiter in-house, and it's because talent is so important, especially in the tech space
we're
in
in
Seattle.
human capital, right?
Yeah, and we're
We're
competing
for-
with Amazon and Microsoft and Expedia and T-Mobile, and all these companies are, especially when it comes to developers and UX. I mean, such hot jobs right now, and in our space, there are not enough bodies to fill all the open positions. And then the salaries that those people are commanding now is unbelievable. So we have to create a really amazing culture at our company and make sure that it's a place that people want to come to work. We focus on make things that matter. So we want to work on things that are going to change the world in some positive way as much as we can. And that compels a lot of people
There's a
to
thread of
come.
altruism in your conversation.
Yeah,
that
it's-
I really
And I think that was what
appreciate.
attracted. Thank you. It's what attracted me to Smashing Ideas too. Is, I walked in and said, this is a good group of people here, and I've been there almost 4 years now, and loved, I would say 98% of the minutes. So that's pretty good.
Yeah.
So
you've been in the industry for a while. How about failure?
Oh, wow,
Have
yeah.
you had any or
So many.
encountered any?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's your take on that? And because I think everyone in the industry, not just those that are new to the industry, trying to figure out, I think, how to navigate that. Because you got to try stuff, and you just don't know really what's necessarily going to work now.
Yeah, I think it's about. I'm not a very risk averse person. I dive into the deep end.
Yeah,
at
I don't know.
times.
I've known you for 12 minutes. I'm not actually that
Yeah.
surprised to hear that.
Right.
But my impression is you take a thoughtful approach.
Yes,
I mean,
yes. You have to.
a studied and you're it's careful, and you can be risky and careful at the same time.
Right. And I think again, digital affords us that ability to have a hypothesis and test it and fail quickly. And so we have a few different things that we say to our employees internally at work, which is number one, get paint on the walls early, meaning put pen to paper and let's get something in front of a customer so that we can see, how do they react to it, so we can evolve. And that's a premise of lean UX. And so people talk about lean and agile. Lean is really about doing things iteratively and fast. Agile isn't about speed, it's about a methodology for breaking down how you work on things. It's navigation, right? So that's getting things on the wall early, and then we say fail fast. And so we want to get something out there as early as possible and know that it didn't work so that we can do something else. So, I mean, we fail every single day at work, and it's great. But
all right, so you say it's great. So how do you handle it? Do you get it out and talk about it, or you say, "Wow, this is great. It didn't work."
We do, yeah. So the way our teams work,
because that's really different than what certainly corporate.
Yes, yeah.
My background is in corporate America. You can have a failure. Maybe 2 big ones, but
right.
But you weren't running around heralding it. Like you walked down the hall and you could see the way people were looking at you. Like
exactly.
They all know.
Yeah, they know that this.
They didn't want to get too close.
Yeah, I think that's the difference between. I had one failure that was a multi-million-dollar failure, and it was I was at Microsoft at the time, and we were doing tests of social advertising essentially, and one of them it didn't work out. But in going in, I talked to the CMO, and there was, I think, 5 things that we had worked on. She's like, well, 4 out of 5, that's pretty good, as opposed to this thing didn't work, you lost it, because the other ones were so successful that it sort of overshadowed. And they were all designed as experiments. And so I think part of it is setting something up as an experiment and being willing to test it. At that time as well, now I've learned we should have done a smaller experiment before investing so much in the big thing. So we do talk about every day what we learned, and that's part of agile development. Is we'll do a 1-week sprint. We do something called a retrospective, where we all look back as a team.
Okay, I like that so much better than a post-mortem.
I know, yeah, it's
much better. I couldn't stand that. Let's have a post-mortem. I'm like, oh, we're dead.
Well, most people do those all the way at the end of a campaign or a project, and we do them every week or every 2 weeks. So,
and they kind of would have the tone of a witch hunt a little bit.
Yeah, they do.
We gotta find
what could we have done.
There's
always
blame
negativity.
Game thing floating around in there instead of like really being about being a learning organization. I mean, it's been my experience. It was certainly my experience in packaged goods and at General Mills that the only thing you can say to anyone that makes a mistake and brings it to you is thank you.
Yes.
And to create an environment and a culture where people will say like, we really screwed this up.
Yeah.
Where you somehow like switch the numbers on the panels and the one that won actually lost.
Yeah.
It would be good to tell people.
We've had that exact thing
before they scale it.
Exactly. And I think part of what you're talking about is the cultural shift that's happening inside of companies. And so yesterday I was at the Chief Digital Officer Summit, and every panel talked about digital transformation, and that's what we do on a daily basis. So there's part of what we do is making the product, but a lot of what we do, which I think a lot of our customers don't realize when they sign up to work with us, is that they change the way that they work inside of the company. And so it's culture, it's process, it's people, it's all of those things, business models that you don't necessarily think of when you say I want an app, and that culture of being able to fail becomes really important.
And how old did you say your company is?
20 years this year.
20 years. Yeah, so that's a decent arc. I mean, I'm just wondering if organizations and cultures are going to be able to change fast enough.
That's the big concern right now.
As the consumer is changing.
And you're seeing pockets within companies that are doing it. And they're becoming centers for excellence.
Yes.
And so it was Nestle yesterday. The chief digital officer at Nestle was talking about this lab that they have, and they have it purposely located right next to the executives. Yeah. And it was,
he's a good friend of mine.
Really,
he's a great guy.
Such a great talk. And,
yes.
And so some of the things that they're doing really help infuse that, and we see that with a lot of the clients that we work with. So.
Yeah. So one of the things that you're doing that I have just so much heart for is teaching.
Yes. Yeah.
Say something about that. And you're teaching at the graduate level.
I am.
In leadership.
In the communications program.
Yeah. So what does communications leadership teaching? What does that look like today?
It there was a gap in the market for people that were learning the communication skills of tomorrow, I guess.
Yes.
And so you can take a series of classes on communications, or you can take the classes that are sort of tactical about SEO or something else. But no one was really building a master's level course about storytelling and how, whether it's
that's
the
great.
production side of things or the strategic side of things. And so I was looking at we were talking about the job market in Seattle, and saying like, we need more skilled people that are coming out of our university here, and I have a passion for that, so let's do it. So I worked with a guy at T-Mobile, and we developed a course called Marketing and Branding Digital Communication, and it's a foundational course. I mean, we look at the processes that you would do for a direct marketing campaign, even where it's, what is segmentation, targeting, positioning, messaging, and then build on top of that the fluidity to adopt a Pinterest campaign or a Snapchat campaign or whatever the hot thing of tomorrow is. So what we really want to do is infuse in people this idea of the fundamentals that they can now apply all these other
practices. Do they get to practice? Have you figured out how to get an experiential element in there? Do they get to practice?
Absolutely. So we do 2 case studies that the students hate, but then they love at the end of it because they're tough. It's Colgate Palmolive and Clean Edge Razor and some fun ones, and then. But we work with I break the class into teams, and then they work with a real client throughout the quarter. And at the end of the quarter, they deliver a marketing plan to that client. So it's been a really popular class. I'm in my 7th year of teaching it. It's packed every single year, and I love doing it. 7 years, that's kind of a generation. Are the students changing? The students are changing. We actually have more international students this year than ever. But I think one of the fun things and really rewarding things for me is seeing the students that I taught 7 years ago are now like leading marketing practices in Starbucks and things like that. I'm just like, and now they're coming back in and speaking in my class, and so I really love that.
Well, that's the first thing. Like as soon as I'd have new recruits, I'd kind of like have them go out and recruit, right? Yeah. Because that was my retention strategy.
Exactly.
As soon as you tell somebody about why you took the job or you like it, like you do like it, right? It's something that kind of happens. You kind of transform yourself.
Yes.
So looking back and looking forward, 2015, what would you say your biggest success was?
One of the biggest successes is I think in many ways cracked the code on how to approach an IoT project. And so IoT is Internet of Things is one of. Well, everybody
wants to do that.
I know, and this is one of the.
You guys are definitely at the bleeding edge. We have this motivational UX, and
we've been fortunate. I joked around with that. One of my good friends used to be the head of strategy at another agency in town. And he's like, "You guys are living the dream. You're making all of us want to make products." But so everything from that, the pilot studies and hooking up the sensors in a way that we could get real-time data and make actionable insights on it, all the way to the documentation that's required for FDA regulated products, FAA regulated products. We work in both of those industries, to aligning like software development and physical product development cycles. It was a year of learning for us, but it was for our clients as well. And at the end of it, we've delivered several products now that are have been really successful in the industry. And
can you say what they are?
I can't, unfortunately. So that's the
why
one.
I asked.
And there's one of them's in the healthcare space, in home health, and it's been phenomenally successful. And it's one of those NDAs where we're the intel inside. We get to we do it on the R&D side, but and so we've ended up with a repeatable process now, and so we can apply that to additional. And that's what motivational UX and some of these other things that we do are. We can take something from the aviation industry or the health industry or the toy industry and apply the same principles to it and have the same positive outcomes.
So what I loved was actually the idea of inspiring and creating more health and happiness with consumers. And we at the ARF are doing a lot of work with neuroscience.
I love that area right now.
I'm really curious how you measure happiness.
So,
or how you kind of know if you're making any progress.
So that's a great question, and that's a good 2016 question, which is
so let's do a 2016 prediction.
Right. So the tools that are available to neuroscientists of yesterday, which are exceptionally expensive, you look at like EEG monitors and things like that. You can buy an off-the-shelf solution today. It's come to scale, and so. For me, that's actually one of the big things for 2016 is a tangible measurement of engagement and happiness. And it's one of the things that I'm personally investing in and our lab is investing in, because we do want to get to the place where we can say, okay, subjectively someone said that they like this, but from a measurement standpoint, I can tell that we're losing them here. We need to do something different. And that's really one of the areas that we're going into. Virtual reality is another big one. You know, I was at a VR conference that you see all of the right players, the same players that were involved in mobile. I don't know if it's going to be the weird headsets that we have to wear today with the headphones and all that. But there's something to that will be that.
Well, it's a little better than, you know, in neuroscience, they were like literally not that long ago putting shower caps and putting gel in people. I mean, which is, if you just really think about taking a consumer and saying, okay, now watch a commercial and pretend like nothing, right?
Right.
I mean, you are measuring the biometrics,
yeah, the
but
wet contact,
very
and stuff like that.
intrusive.
Yes.
And a little artificial.
Well, and there's, you know, some of the monitors that are available today, they are wet contact monitors, but you can actually measure micro movements and facial expressions. You know this stuff, but yeah, it's I love it. It's fascinating. We have had the opportunity now to work with behavioral psychologists at the University of Washington. One of my favorite projects of last year, actually, and which will launch next year, is a quit smoking application for the severely mentally ill. And it's a population that consumes a large majority of the cigarettes smoked in the United States, exponentially larger than the general population. And the application teaches you to quit before you get to quit, and it's made specifically for that audience. And so that's step one, and then step two is we want to move into some of the measurement techniques and things like that go along with it.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, it is absolutely breathtaking what you can do with big data these days.
It is.
What you're saying about quitting smoking reminds me of something I heard about a year ago at South by Southwest with one of our member companies, W2O. They hosted an event, and there were folks from, it was between the government and insurance companies and then client companies. They had gotten together, and they were actually, it was permission based, but the employee would disclose that they had schizophrenia, and then they were actually using content analysis to discern that they were starting to go into a manic phase.
Right, yeah.
And then alert them.
That's great.
That you're right. So actually, just by their actual like communication behavior and their social media behavior, they could start to notice it's like pattern recognition.
Yeah.
So I mean, I do think like these are such great examples of being able to actually literally make people's lives better.
You're right, and I mean our ability. My doctor, my personal doctor, is the chief of informatics at Swedish. It was, you know, sort of one of those serendipitous sort of things. And he talks about, he goes, you know, you're a generally healthy guy, so I see you once a year. But if I got alerts throughout the year, I could help you, you know, better manage yourself. And so, I mean, that's really where things are headed now. And we can, you know, affect juvenile diabetes. We can affect, you know, help people quit smoking or alert people when they're trending in a path that's potentially dangerous. Exactly.
Yeah.
There's a lot of amazing things that we can do.
Fabulous. All right. Well, this is like, I'm so sad this is over because I got to like talk to you for a year. But to be continued.
Yes, please.
To be sure. Yes. So Brian Marr, it's just so great to spend time with you and your exciting adventure in smashing ideas, and you have a really interesting background. You know, I really love that you're bringing, you know, psychology and this kind of thoughtful approach to bold invention. And really applaud you for creating a culture inside your organization. I used to say I have to earn the right for people to stay, and that's what it sounds like. How you're framing up your leadership role in your organization. And,
that's a great summary of it.
Not afraid to talk about learning and failure and learning from failure, and that just inspires even more opportunities. And so between your motivational UX and improving health and happiness, go.
Thank you. We will. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me too. This is fantastic.
Great.